Hello and welcome to a new Italian PNC video. Today we will be looking once again at the 10,000 BCE map made by Mate888, which will be linked down in the description down below. So this map shows the world in the year 10,000 BCE, so just around the end of the last ice age and where civilizations before the last collapse started sprouting up. So in this map we have elements of historical plausibility, as we saw in the last video, such as things like the Minoan Empire. We saw things such as the Black Sea flood, the flood myths, the fact that England, Wales, Scotland and Ireland were united with the rest of the European continents. We saw other interesting things like the Thulan merchants of Thule. We saw interesting other settlements, stuff like this, pyramids, Egypt, the rest of Africa, the pre-Bantu realms of Africa, the Empire of Cham in what is nowadays Ethiopia and the rest of Abyssinia, but also as well as things that are less likely to exist but are somewhat possible. And we saw that in Atlantis, the Atlantean Empire, the Eurasian Empire, as well as the things like the colonies of Atlantis that went from the mainland of Atlantis, that is located in modern-day Mauritania, all the way up to the lands of the colony of Babel, so where the Tower of Babel or Tower of Babel was created in biblical history. So we saw a lot of these things, but we have much more to explore, and today we will be focusing on Asia, since we did not cover it too well in the last video. So first of all, we have to remember what we talked about last time. Since this is right before the end of the last ice age, the levels of the sea are very different from what we have nowadays. So things like some seas and some lakes are bigger or smaller. We saw this with the Black Sea, which was not linked with the Mediterranean Sea, as in those times the Black Sea was not flooded yet. We saw that with the fact that the Caspian and Aral seas were united. We saw it with the fact that the northern parts of Europe are not in fact split up like we know today, so there's no Northern Sea, no Baltic Sea, nothing right here, no Kiel Passage or well-known passages right there. And of course there's much more things that are less well known, as like the fact that the Red Sea is not linked up with the Arabian Sea or the Indian Ocean, and instead it is blocked by the lands of modern-day Yemen and Djibouti. And in the north there is no, of course, Suez Canal to divide it and to unite the Mediterranean Sea with the rest of the oceans of the world, but there is of course the Mediterranean Sea passage through Gibraltar, or what nowadays is Gibraltar, and that connects to the Atlantic Ocean. So in the last episode we saw how in this era, according to this map, Atlantis made an empire. We saw its feasibility as well as the location, that is the Eye of the Sahara, which in case you don't know, I recommend watching the last video so you know what I'm talking about. But since I'm still going to remind you that it is basically the location which is most probable to be the ancient location of Atlantis as described by Plato in ancient Greek history. So once again, we will go back to Europe before we continue with Asia, because we skipped on some parts of the map that I didn't really expand upon, which is mainly Italy. So in Italy you can see two things that are interesting. One is the fact that the Alps are way more relevant to the map, because of course all this part is huge, is basically full with glaciers because of the temperature of the area. So the entirety of the Alps as well as the Dinaric Alps are united in one single mountain chain, and they are all filled with glaciers, which is why there's so many rivers that come from here, which are the Rhine River and the Danube River. Then we can notice something else. We notice the fact that the thing that we call the Adriatic Sea is non-existent, as this land is basically just land, as you can see right here. So just as the Mediterranean Sea did not unite with the Black Sea and form the passage of the Bosphorus Straits like we know nowadays, same thing happened here with the Dinaric Alps and the Apennines, which are the other mountain chain of Italy, being too close to each other, which means that the water coming in from the Mediterranean Sea has yet to flood this area and create the Adriatic Sea. So there's no such things as the Istrian Peninsula or the Venice Lagoon or Dalmatia or anything of the kind. Then we have some more interesting places that are mentioned on this part of the map. We have the Alba Longa. So in case you don't know, there's a legend in ancient Roman history about Alba Longa, which used to be the location of the first Latins in the world, basically. The Latins being the same kind of people the Romans originated from, but eventually the Romans united all the Latin populations under their rule. But in this point in time, so 10,000 BCE, so 10,000 before the birth of Christ, and of course 12,000 years from now, in the past, I don't think there was such thing as Alba Longa, because Alba Longa is described by the ancient Romans as something that existed right before the birth of Rome, which was in 753 BCE, which means literally almost more than 9,000 years later from this map, which means that probably Alba Longa was not a thing, although we have recallings of Alba Longa existing during the Trojan Wars. As you can see right here, there's no thing as Troy because of the fact that the Bosphorus Strait doesn't exist, so the region of Troas, which was where Troy was found in the 20th century or 19th century, I don't remember. Anyways, the legendary city of Troy does not exist yet, and therefore I don't think Alba Longa could exist, but if it did, it would be weird that this single very long-lasting city would not evolve into a city-state or at least some kind of empire. I would expect something more like it. Then we have the Rasanim city-states, which are not really mentioned, but we can probably hypothesize that they are these states right here. So Sopon, Quilon, Saras, Tar, Korat, Kalaset, Squilur. Actually Squilur I think was part of this princely states here. So this part right here, so what is nowadays the Booth of southern Italy, and these parts are both client states to the Atlantean Empire, so right here, and they are at the same time the Rasanim city-states. So all of these are not regional states, they don't have like precise borders, of course, because it's once again 10,000 BCE, but they do have societies built upon in their cities. And one interesting thing I noticed is that Baltish is a city in what is nowadays Malta, but nowadays Malta is way smaller and is more comparable to this little thing right here in size, instead of being almost the size of Sicily, which is very interesting comparingly, since the sea levels are completely different. It will make sense that once the parts of the Black Sea are flooded, as well as the creation of the Adriatic Sea, so would Malta lose a lot of their land. Moving to the east, we can finally start talking about Asia, as this episode's focus has already been mentioned earlier. But once again, I just wanted to make a small recap about Europe, since we did kind of skip this part in the last episode. We went like this, so that's why I wanted to mention that. But now we can actually focus on more interesting stuff, which is more developed upon. There's more cities, there's more like historical proof of the existence of these places, and we can start by the kingdom of Yamhed, with the capital in Harif. So one thing I want to mention here is the fact that I do think the kingdom of Yamhed might be the place where Gobekli Tepe is. So if you don't know what Gobekli Tepe is is probably one of the most ancient and well-preserved sites, like historical sites, which means basically a proof of a civilization that existed in the years of 10,000 BCE and even further back. So a lot of people believe that there were no civilizations and no advanced civilizations in 10,000 BCE, but this has been proved wrong through actual findings of Gobekli Tepe, which was around this area here, basically a city, or at least a complex of various different buildings, which proves once again, it proves the existence of settlements, the existence of the capacity of a civilization creating advanced structures. There was a temple inside it, so it proves that organized religion existed, and much more, because there's like sculptures and things set in stone that represent animals, deities, humans, and so on and so forth. So all of this proves that at some point in ancient Anatolia, 10,000 BC, and maybe even before 10,000 BC, there was an advanced civilization. So once again, we see here the kingdom of Yamhed, so just get a little bit closer to it, and we can see the cities of Harif and Yamhed itself, and I do believe that probably Gobekli Tepe would have been part of the kingdom of Yamhed. Now, I'm not sure whether the kingdom of Yamhed is supposed to be this entire thing here, or just the one that is contained through these mountains here and this river here, but I'm going to assume it's the second one, so it's smaller, but I had to be sure about its location, and now that I remember, it might even be in the kingdom of Natuf, but there is no actual mention of Gobekli Tepe itself, so I might be wrong. I might be in the kingdom of Yamhed. Anyways, one of these kingdoms has the origins of Gobekli Tepe, so we know that one of these kingdoms existed, either Natuf or Yamhed. Anyways, the important thing is it did exist. Might have not been called like this, might have been slightly different borders, but we know that the center of this kingdom existed through the findings of Gobekli Tepe. Also, we can see that the division between these kingdoms is human, arbitrary, as we can see right here by the kind of border they have. So usually in ancient times we did have mostly river borders like here and mountain borders like here. But in this case, it appears that the actual border of these places are not along the river, but around it and next to it. So it is different, and means that these civilizations were advanced enough to figure out how borders worked better than just looking at natural boundaries and choosing them as borders. Also, the kingdom of Natuf has the cities of Van, Arat, which also should include the mountain of Ararat, which should be the one where Noah's Ark got after the Great Flood. So once again, more proof, or at least if not proof, more things to link up with the Black Sea flood is because of its vicinity to this area. Anyways, we can see that the kingdom of Natuf has many cities and many settlements like Alm, Van, Natuf, which is the capital, and Amgat, sorry. I thought it was Amgat. Sorry. Then we have the kingdom of Urar. So Urar might be the place where the ancient Armenians lived. Of course, Armenians themselves were a civilization and a group of people that were created basically way after this timeline. Way after this point in time, so 10,000 BCE, but there is proof that there is a continuation of culture as well as a continuation of how the civilization of the Armenians existed even before the times of modern Armenians or ancient Armenians. So the kingdom of Urar probably is something near to what the kingdoms of Urartu was in the times of 2000 BCE, so way closer to like the Roman Empire, the ancient Greeks, but still very distant from what we now call Armenians. That said, I do not think these are Indo-Europeans. As we saw in the last episode of this map, basically we saw that the first Proto-Indo-European states are presented in the Kingdom of the Horse Lords, as well as the places near this area right here, so the Empire of Ata, Korikos kingdoms, and so on and so forth. So this is technically the homeland of the Indo-Europeans, although we have no proof that any Proto-Indo-European kingdom existed all the way back into 10,000 BCE. Still, if there was, they were probably located here, so it does not make sense that the Armenians also are part of this group, since they would be too far south. So probably this kingdom of Urar is not as much linked with Armenians as I believed, and it is probably just the location that is similar, but the actual people probably are different, or at least it might be something of a mix, as eventually the Armenians from the Indo-Europeans would eventually come into Urar, and the populations might have mixed together, creating a mixed populations of Armenians coming from the Indo-European steppes and the actual original inhabitants of the kingdom of Urar. At least I think it might be something akin this. Then we go to the Empire of Arur. The Empire of Arur is way smaller compared to like the states in the north. It just borders these rivers and expands always only into the city of Arur itself. It does not hold any other settlements, but it is still an empire when compared to the rest of the city-states, since in fact this is what we now call the Fertile Crescent. So this area here used to be the biggest and most populated part of the world in 10,000 BCE, because all the population that learned how to farm and settle lived basically in this area. Of course, there were exceptions, as we saw here with Atlantis, stuff like this, the colonies, blah blah blah, but the actual proved settlement of the land was mainly here, and of course in the Levant as well, and Egypt, but that would be even later, I would argue, probably. So in the parts that existed in the old Fertile Crescent, we can see some city-states. They were called the Shiniri city-states. We have a lot of them. I do not know. I'm trying to think of somebody that I do know, of some that I know. Like, this is the border between the city-states that are independent and then the colony of Babel, which once again is a colony of Atlantis. But when it comes to these places right here, I don't know many of them. Like, Assur might be Asir, so the capital of the late Assyrian Empire. Then Elon, we have a little Musk colony here. That's just a joke, but I mean, that's pretty funny. We have Kish, Napar. Okay, Napar I think was one that was like in accounts of historical narratives of the Babylonians and the Sumerians, so I might think the Napar one is truth. Then we have Upak, Isin, Shur, also one that I think was existing. I'm pretty sure Shur existed just like in Napar. We have Sapar, Karwa, Uma, Gears, Shem, Azara also sounds like something that might have existed. Ubaid, not sure. Nusi, El probably is just something else. Nanif, Kanis, Arim, Wasu. Not sure about these ones. But I do see some that I'm sure that existed in the Sumerian chronicles and the Babylonian ones as well. So some of these cities might have existed by the point that the Sumerians and Babylonians civilization sprung up, but some of them might have fallen before it. Also because of the fact that the fall of the Atlantean Empire, if it really existed, might have caused a complete lack and just deceasement and decayment of technology and civilizational structures of this part of the continent of Asia because of its vicinity to the actual Atlantean Empire. But I remind you, it also controls the colony of Canaan, so modern day Levant, and of course the land of Palestine or Israel, call it as you want. That said, we can actually move eastwards now to the places that are east of the Caspian Sea and of course east of the Arabian Peninsula, which we already talked about in the last episode. We saw things like the Serpent Man, the Jackal Man, the Dafari city-states, and all the trade they ruled between the lands of the Far East or Central East and the rest of the Near East and Europe. So I recommend once again watching that episode if you don't want to be confused with the things we're mentioning today. Then we move eastwards to the Larian Plateau. So the Larian Plateau is the thing and the place that divides the Near East, so the Middle East, from the rest of the Asian continent. In this case, we have natural boundaries such as the Persian mountain chain right here that divides these parts of the Middle East from the rest with the Larian Plateau. So the Larian Plateau has interesting factors, like the fact that there are rowing? Wait, what does this say? Roving? Probably, I'm not sure what this says. Anyways, roving, the important thing is old Lemurians, okay? So one thing you gotta know about this map includes, as we said, Atlantis, but it also includes Lemuria, which we will probably check out in the next episode. So we saw things as Upper Lemuria and then Southern Lemuria, so we have a lot of things to explore. But that said, we have the existence of Lemurians as a singular population that came from Asia and then expanded into the continent of Lemuria, which was not sunken at that point in time. So as seen in this part of the map, we have these populations of Lemurians that were left behind living in the Larian Plateau. It appears that the Larian Plateau does not have any other cities, so I'm going to assume that these are only the last populations that live here, since the peoples of Lemuria eventually went southern in the southern parts of the continents, and we can see that the rowing old Lemurians are basically all the way into Lemuria itself. So we can see there's some kind of mass migrations of old Lemurians that starts apparently in the Larian Plateau itself and eventually goes into India, into the Indian subcontinent, and into South Asia, the southernmost parts of what is today Ceylon or Sri Lanka and Tamil Nadu, and then goes even more to south into Lemuria. So that's pretty interesting, I think. Then we have the mountain chains of modern-day Bactria, actually classical Bactria, which would be modern-day Afghanistan and Pakistan, that show us things such as the parts of Central Asia. In the parts of Central Asia that would correspond to modern-day Turkestan, actually, yeah, Turkestan probably is a great term to mention this area, but we will also call it ancient Scythia, as was the name in classical eras. We can see places like the Balkh, Mughrab, Kopet, Dagh cities, as well as the cities of Zeverazvan and Sorek, all in the rivers of Central Asia. Then we have this lake here, which I don't actually remember the name of. It's a lake in Kazakhstan, but for some reason I forgot the name of. And it has the city of Karakul. And this part of the map is actually owned by a single state, the Gauk Empire, which I assume to be a nomadic lifestyle kind of state, similar to the Mongols or the Kipchak hordes that invaded Europe and the rest of the world, I mean the old world, in the times of the Middle Ages as well as the early Middle Ages. We can see here they have some cities, so I don't think they're completely nomadic, because they do own some settlements that are, just settled, and they have cities such as Dorono, Gonur, Sonkol, Anau, Pamir, and Takchara. So one thing I want to mention is the fact that Pamir sounds a lot like the Pamirs that live into, I think, Tajikistan. The Pamirs are a very old population that derived from Indo-Europeans, so the same like homeland of the Horse Lords or the Koryokos kingdoms, as we saw in the last episode. And the Pamirs are a very interesting kind of ethnic population. You can check them out just by searching images of Pamirs, and they kind of look like Europeans, even though they don't actually descend from Europeans themselves, but they have the same ancestral origin of Europeans. So Pamir being a city might mean that while the actual Indo-Europeans have not kind of spread all the way to what we know today, so Europe itself probably and parts of the Middle East, but they might have spread all the way to what is nowadays, like, I believe, Mongolia probably, or the parts that we now call East Turkestan or Xinjiang. And then that could be the settlement of Pamir. Takchara just probably is a settlement around the lake, and it is protected by these mountain chains where the Uyghurs live nowadays. Then we have to the south places that are less populated, so here we have some river valleys that create the cities of Esul, as well as Isik, which is near a river. And then we have the other mountain chains of Tibet, I think. Like, let me check. Yeah, that's Tibet. So this is Tibet, all this part here, the Great Eastern Plateau, and in this part of the world, of course, there's basically nothing, but we do have something that is mentioned in the old chronicles of Tibet, the red-haired giants. Of course, once again, linked up with the Pamir settlement, and the Pamirs also have red hair, so it might just be giants in the case that the rest of the population here was very small and very, like, not tall, probably 150 centimeters, or for our American viewers, 5 foot tall, even less maybe. And when the Indo-European Pamirs arrived, so these or at least the proto-Pamirs arrived, so these tall warriors, comparatively white, red-haired and stuff like this, they might have thought that they were giants, which is why in these mountains they are called red-haired giants. Or maybe they are actually giants, I don't know, I'm not sure. Anyways, we see in the south of the red-haired giant land, we see the city of Oxus, which in the ancient world meant basically ox, so ox. It was kind of a beast, similar to a cow. Or do oxes still exist? Actually, I'm not very sure. I don't know. Anyway, we have the Kashmir tribes. That was what I was wanting to mention here, which are basically right into the Indus River. So the Indus River goes like this, and then of course starts from the mountain chains of Tibet. But the Kashmir tribes... Oh, wait. Okay, Kashmir, that's what it is. So this is Kashmir, right? Kind of, yeah. I mean, not precisely, but that is part of Kashmir. So it makes sense that even in 10,000 BCE, the populations here would be recalled as Kashmir. Then north of it, we have the Kingdom of Nur, right where the Fergana Valley would exist. So we have the capital Nur, the states of, not the states, the city-states of Darklash, Kopet, and Dag, as well as Mugrab. And of course, this territory here is all owned by the Kingdom of Nur, which is one of the only actual states here in this part. I mean, not really, since we do have the Gog Empire, which at this point I am starting to believe that the borders of the Gog Empire extend all the way into these parts we mentioned earlier, because you can see here they do have some borders, these like green dotted lines, and they do trace them here, and we do not have a western border, so they might have just expanded all this way. So in this case, the Gog Empire would be the biggest state in the world, apart from, of course, the Atlantean Empire, which is very interesting. I would have not expected it to be this relevant. Then again, we do have another empire here, the Empire of Harap. So in case you don't know, there was once in the old times the Empire of Harappa, or actually the civilization of the Harappa. We do not know if it was a singular state or many city-states. Actually, we do kind of know, and it is probably the second option, so it probably was very multiple city-states, just as they existed near the, basically the Fertile Crescent, they existed near the Indus River Valley. The population that inhabited the Empire of Harap was of Indian stock, but not of the Indo-European one, but of the Dravidian stock, so the pre-Indo-European inhabitants of India, although this specifically is a very contested topic by many, so I'm not gonna say it is definitely like this. It might have been differently, because I know a lot of people from that part of the world, and even other parts of the world, that get mad when they are reminded of the fact that the Indian populations that existed before the Indo-Europeans arrived were basically driven south or mixed with the new arrivals. So yeah, just not gonna touch that too much, just let's get to the cities. So the cities are of course Harap, which is the capital, which is also a port. Is this like a modern day Karachi? I think it is. Probably not specifically in Karachi. Nah, probably it's. I think Karachi is more in the east. This in the west of this area, but it is near it, so it makes sense that this will be a major port. Then we have Mohan, Odaro, Brahaom, which sounds like a Brahma. Then we have Adashiya, Rapa, Dola, Kliban, Bangan, Nausharo, Raman, Manda, as well as cities that exist inside the mountain chains of this area, which are not, of course, near the Indus River. But of course, even if we do mention these, we have to remind ourselves that only the ones that are near the river have the ability to sustain major civilizations, so not even all of these are like parts of the Harap Empire. The Empire of Harap probably is mostly sustained through trade with the Atlanteans, as we do have them very near to the Dafari city-states that basically act as some kind of link between the west and the east, as to link the Empire of Harap, so the main civilization of the Indian subcontinent, with the colony of Babel, and with that means the entirety of the Atlantean Empire. So I think that is pretty cleared up with that subjects. Then we have, of course, many city-states, which are called the Dharavi fortress states, which exist all the way in these mountain chains. We have the Dharavi fortress state of Ockham. Oh my, why? Why are these names so weirdly? Are these actually like the names that they were given? I can't pronounce this. I can't do this. But anyways, we do have other mountain states. So even Dharavi sounds like Dravidian, so probably more to point to the theory I was discussing about earlier. Then we have even more Dharavi fortress states that exist near the Empire of Harap in this area here, like the Khedgar, Kerhert. Okay, these are all unpronounceable to me, probably because of my Italian tongue. I don't know, English tongue. I'm not sure, but these are actually unpronounceable to me. Anyways, we do have another kingdom here, which is a neighbor of the Empire of Harap, which does mean that the Dhafari city-states probably don't only trade with the Emperor Harap, but even with the Kingdom of Gundalam, which has Gundalam as the main city, which once again basically on this river, which explains how they could sustain their civilization, as well as the Mitathai city. Then we have the Gondi kingdoms right here in once again near this river. Then in the north we can see the Nepali kingdoms. Where are the Nepali kingdoms? There is no borders here, and the only cities are Nayapal and Gorok. Are those the Nepali kingdoms? Not sure. I feel like there should have been borders here, or some like city-state capital thing. No. So we just know there were Nepali kingdoms here, so from the Nepal area, but we don't know anything about them. I mean, it's not impossible. It is kind of plausible. When we have the Shamballah tribes here, which are in the areas of basically just Tibet, and then we have something very interesting, the hidden city of Shamballah. And the hidden city of Shamballah sounds a lot like the hidden city of Shangri-La, which we explored thoroughly in the other videos in this channel. But for those that do not know, in ancient, even not even ancient, just definitely in mythology of the Tibetans, there is some hidden city in the like Himalayan mountain chains that is some kind of portal to the underworld. So if you go into Shangri-La, you can literally traverse the parts of Earth inside of Earth, and we do have other references of this in this map, as we do have in the western part of the map in Europe to Agartha and the furthest north. Once again, Agartha, very similar concept, hollow Earth theory. The Earth is hollow and you can traverse inside it. So we have another thing that links it to that in the hidden city of Shambhala. I mean, it could be just a hidden city, a normal hidden city, but it is interesting that they did have it mentioned this way. That sounds a lot of Shangri-La. So it might be just a change of name, but it might be the same thing. Doesn't seem like there's much more to talk about here. We have the wild men here, which are a recurring theme. Even here we had the wild men, them being basically just tribal people that don't really exist inside of civilizations, city-states, or any like developed tribe. We have something interesting here. With the city of Xibubao, we have the western provinces, which appear to be some kind of Chinese state, or at least some kind of client to the Chinese state of this part of the world. So even in 10,000 BCE, there might have been some Chinese civilization, although historical records recall Chinese civilization only up to like 2000 BCE or something akin those time periods. A lot of historical records that are accepted by most historians point Chinese civilization starting around 3000 or 2000 BCE. But because of how Chinese civilization has existed in the past, where one dynasty would exist, then it would be basically destroyed, and one dynasty would rise after it, and there would be a period of basically collapse, of civilizational decayment, and generally just fall of the empire. I wouldn't even honestly doubt it that in 10,000 BC there would be some kind of Chinese civilization that could inhabit the western provinces as marked here. So I don't think it's unreasonable for this map to show some kind of Chinese civilization already having some kind of borders that are not completely natural and that indeed has a settlement. But of course this map does not show all of China, only like the very western part, in the places that are Han majority nowadays. So there might be more to it, but we can't really see because of the authors finishing the map right here. So if we go south of modern day China, we can see things in modern day Burma or Myanmar. So there seems to be some states here, or at least two of them. I guess this is more like in Bangladesh or Bengal, but this one is definitely in modern day Myanmar, and it is the state that owns Eretmu, Nahfal, and then we have the Neo-Lemurian tribe, so Neo-Lemurians. Okay, so there kind of seems to be some division between the old Lemurians, which still inhabit the parts of like non-Lemuria, so basically India, Pakistan, Iran, Afghanistan, and so on and so forth. Then there seems to be the actual Lemurians, which exist in Lemuria, which we'll once again explore in the next episode. And then there seem to be the Neo-Lemurians, which might have been, and this is basically just, I'm trying to make sense of this, but I think what happened is this, basically tracing like migration routes. So the old Lemurians originated here in the Larian Plateau. Then they started moving. They started moving here, they started moving here, started moving here, and then they reached actual Lemuria. And some of them moved eastwards and arrived to Myanmar. So this is why we have the Neo-Lemurian tribes as shown in this part of the map. And once again, we do have the Serpent Man here, which at this point I'm not sure why. This is the second time I see the Serpent Man. First was in the desert of Iran, and then here in Myanmar, but this is very interesting. I'm not sure what they're meant to represent. Then we have other states and cities like here, like Davet, Burum, Nahfal, and then even the Kotara kingdoms on the eastern coast of India, with the kingdom of Konda, Kuntasi, Sukortada, Kayatha Kot, Somnath, and more. And finally, last thing for this video, we have the Kuruk Empire that starts in the city of Kuruk, which might be where modern-day Dhaka might be. Actually, thinking about more, it probably isn't where Dhaka is, because this is before the sea levels rose to that point, so this is probably all hidden inside of the sea, which means that it's all flooded, which adds to the flood myths even more. Actually, this could be like the eastern comparison to the western flood myth of the Black Sea, the floods of the Bengal region. Finally, we have these cities of Ahar and Rakhine. With that, I finished this video, because I don't think there's more to talk about in this map. When it comes to Asia, of course, we still have Lemuria to cover, and of course the West, so the parts of America that are shown on this map. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There's much more to learn about this map, there's much more to learn about the world, and I hope you found it as interesting as I did. Please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment to boost the algorithm for the videos so that these videos can reach like 5,000 views in a week or something along those lines, and thank you for watching. We will see each other next time. Goodbye.